Good evening, everyone, or good day, or whatever time you are watching this video. I am hoping that you are having a good day, and I'm going to need someone to check for me because I just want to verify that my microphone is working. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to join. It's 8:59. We're 1 minute ahead of time, but as Sabbath school teachers, we always like to be early, right? Uh, and two of my favorites. Can you guys hear me? Someone say yes or no for me. Can anyone hear me? I didn't get my microphone notice that everything was working okay. Ricky, can you hear me? Jamie? All right, let's see here. Maybe we'll do it this way. Oh, great. Great. All right. Normally I get a little sound bar to tell me that everything is working. I want to quickly share this on my page, and I hope you've had a good week. Every week it just seems like it goes faster and faster and just busier and busier. And if your life is anything like mine, for our Sabbath School ministry, we just have to rise to the occasion. We have to fight to carve out time to be effective Sabbath school teachers. The days where we could just come in on Friday evening and find a quarterly and find our highlighter and highlight a few things. That doesn't really work anymore. We have to do time prepare. And regardless of how busy your life is, you have to carve out the time. Before we get started this evening on lesson number 9, which means this is our 8th session together, our 8th teachers meeting, and we've covered some great subjects so far in this quarter. I'm really enjoying it, and when I first saw this quarter come out, I knew it was a great teacher's quarter. Some quarterlies for the quarter are a little bit more challenging as a Sabbath school teacher. And this quarter, because it's so relevant, it covers just some broad topics that all of us can find something of value in. So before we get started on giving you an outline, again, for those of you who are watching this video for the first time, the Sabbath School Teachers Meeting is not a Sabbath School class. We're not going through the lesson. My role in this teachers meeting is to help you to have a strategy for when you lead your class to make sure it's a captivating, interactive class full of participation. That's my goal, okay? So I'm going to share some ideas that you can choose to adopt or not, or just give you some thoughts on how you can make sure your class is more than a lecture and it's more than a history lesson. One of my Sabbath school pet peeves, I don't even know if that's strong enough or the right way to explain it, is to go to a Sabbath school class where the teacher does all of the talking. I just, if I have a choice, I'll never go back to the class where the teacher does all of the talking. I'll either find another class, and if they're all like that, I just won't come to Sabbath school. I refuse to come to Sabbath school to hear a lecture or a sermon when I know immediately following that usually is the 11 o'clock service with a sermon. So I am imploring teachers to change, basically. For those of you who have been teaching a long time, I know when I go to different churches that I go understanding that many people feel like, hey, I've been doing this so long, I really don't, I really don't need any, guidelines. I'm a good teacher. Basically, what they're saying is, I know a lot about the Bible and I share it all the time, but teaching must be more than that. So that's my purpose tonight, to give you some ways uh, to go about having an interactive class. I want to say that I've gotten some private messages that have been so encouraging from different people who have viewed this either live or on the YouTube page about how it has made a difference in their class. And I'm really touched by that. I know these principles work. These principles, along with God's blessings, work. You will have an interactive class where people will say, I enjoyed that. Again, we want to do everything. I'm going to put some principles up. I told you I have my board tonight, and I have my board. I want to put some principles up tonight that you should jot down, especially those of you who haven't viewed it before. I have some people on here who probably could lead this class. Ricky probably could lead this by himself. But everything we do should be done from the eyes of a visitor. Everything we do in Sabbath school. If you are a Sabbath school teacher, the way that you teach your class should be done from the eyes of a visitor. If you are the Sabbath school superintendent, you want to gear your programs and your approach and the mindset of your department that we anticipate and want to be visitor friendly. Not that just when a visitor comes in, somebody rushes and tries to find them quarterly and tries to find the right page and say, this is where we are. Being visitor friendly is more than that. It means the way that we, here's the two things. Let me explain it this way. And there's a video for this. The two questions you must ask yourself are, number one, when you're looking at your Sabbath school program and as a teacher, number one, why are we doing this? Like the different parts of Sabbath school. Why are we doing it? And who does it benefit? If the answer does not always contain the visitor, you should stop doing it. Which means if, and I'll get back on track, if you are a superintendent and your preliminaries are geared for fellow Seventh-day Adventists, you might need to rethink that and say, how could we make this more visitor friendly? All right, so we want to talk about that. The next thing that some principles that I want to share are the same thing that we talk about every week, and we'll kind of go through it. This is you. That is your class. That's your class right there. Move out the way a little bit. Your goal as the Sabbath school teacher, the facilitator, as the pilot, is to get this plane up in the air. When you go to the airport, I'll be going to the airport next weekend, going up to New York, by the way, for the Greater New York Conference. They're having a Sabbath school day, a full day from like 9 to 5 on next Sunday, and I'm a presenter. So I'll fly out and spend Sabbath up there. But when I get to the airport and I get on the plane, I don't want to be going around the different tarmacs and then they pull to another gate and they pull to another gate. When they pull away from the gate, I want the plane to take off. And that's what you want to do. You want the plane to take off, which means you need hands in the air. If you are still talking 10 minutes into your lesson discussion, you're doing all the talking, you haven't taken off yet. You have to find a way to get hands in the air. And some of you who follow this teachers meeting, you know what I'm going to suggest. The same principles. I don't care if it's 5, 50, 500, 5,000. These principles work. And modify them as you will, but I want to give you a core way. So you need to get hands in the air, take them on a journey without getting hijacked. Can't get hijacked. You put a lot of time into preparing this week for your class. You can't just let people take over your class. Hijackers are most successful when you do this. On Sunday's lesson, blah, 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 blah. On Monday's lesson, blah, 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 blah. The hijacker knows everything you're going to say, and they're just waiting for the right time. Don't do that. My method, in which I strongly urge, is that you teach with your Bible only. That's it. When you get out of the car on Sabbath, leave this in the car, but prepare, okay? So you got to get them in the air, and then you have to land someplace that's relevant, okay? So some of you know these things. I'm just refreshing what I've already told you many times, that Sabbath school, I told you my pet peeve. I got to find a stronger way. Probably my number one irritant. No, I don't want to say irritant. Probably the thing that bothers me the most about going to different Sabbath schools, and I've gone to so many Sabbath schools. I've been blessed over these last almost 10 years to go to countless churches and experience Sabbath school all over the world, but there's nothing that is so irritating as a teacher who does all the talking. Not only is that irritating, generally it means the teacher didn't prepare, because if we've been teaching for a while, we can get up and talk for 40 minutes. We can talk for 40 minutes about religious stuff and say some stuff that really wasn't saying anything. We can do that. So I want you to prepare in a way that you have participation, okay? You must be more than a history teacher. You're not going to get people to come out to your class for just history lessons. You have to find a way to be inspiring and encouraging. Help me to grow. If I'm in your class, challenge me to grow along with you and encourage me for what I'm dealing with in life. If you can do that, and we did it from the Bible, I will probably come back to your class. Not only will I probably come back to your class, I will probably tell some friends of mine about your class. Okay? So this week we are talking about ministry in the New Testament church. And there's so much in this week's lesson for a teacher that I think they put too much in the lesson. I should have contacted somebody. They should have gave me a sneak preview. I would have said, oh, that's too much, because either one of these subjects we could have talked about over and over. But what I want to do is to outline the process of making sure you have interaction, okay? Before I get carried away in some of the topics of the lesson, what I want you to do as a Sabbath school teacher is to find, first of all, what's the first question? Oh, let me see this. As a Sabbath school teacher, what is the main question that I am asking myself as I prepare to teach the lesson? What is the number one question I must ask myself in order to make sure I have an inspiring and encouraging lesson? What is the number one question I must ask myself? I'll give you a second to see if anybody could do it. Oh, I see my space bar moved, I think. Yes, Christina, there's too much. There's so much good in here. Only focus on 2 or 3 things. All right, let's see here. What's the number one question? That's it, Jamie. You hit it perfectly. How does this week, how does this week's lesson, how can this week's lesson help the people in my class? That is your mindset. Not, okay, I need to learn all this information so I can tell all this information to the people in my class. That's not your goal. How does this week's lesson help the people in my class? That's your number one question. Jamie, you are spot on. So I want to give you some ways to approach that. You want to, as a Sabbath school teacher, you want to find the theme of the lesson. Like this week's lesson, the title is Ministry in the New Testament Church. Okay, that's the title of the lesson. That's not necessarily, to me, the theme of the lesson. And things speak to us all differently. We all look at things from where we come from in life. So I want to give you the what I see as the theme of the lesson and a roadmap that you might want to use to make sure you have interaction. And my theme will be my icebreaker, so to say. Now, I told some of you, I hate to seem like, I know you guys all know these answers. I know there's new people that's watching, so that's why I have to sort of be redundant. But I told you that your goal as a Sabbath school teacher is to get this plane up in the air, is to get hands in the air, and to also include visitors in raising their hands. Like if there's a visitor who is not a Christian, a non-Seventh-day Adventist, I want to make sure that I start my lesson in a way that I can get maximum participation. And can somebody tell me my method, the method that Curtis uses to guarantee to get people's hands in the air when I start? Like I'll do my housekeeping. I'll say, we got a great lesson. Please make sure to keep your comments short and stay on topic. I say that every time now I teach, especially if I'm a teacher where I've never taught before. That's my rule. I always say, hey, we're going to have a great lesson today. I just say anything you want. Just keep your comments short and on the topic, because we always run out of time. I've never led, I shouldn't say that's too definitive. I can't remember the last time that I've led a class where we ran out of stuff to talk about. There's always too much to talk about. So let me see if somebody got the answer for me. The Great Commotion. Is commotion a word you wanted, Christina? The Great Commotion? If it is, you'll have to explain that to me. The Great, or did you mean the Great Commission? Read scripture. That's definitely one way to get people participating. Like, so as Christina said, maybe when you start your class, you say, class, we're talking about ministry in the New Testament. Why don't we all turn to the memory text? And generally, I have a King James version, and generally the quarterly is New King James version. I usually make that remark. And I'll generally say, let's all read this together, just to start to get the juices going. So that's a great way. Let's all read the memory text together. And Jamie is on it. What I do, which Jamie just confirmed, I always start with a definition question. I don't tell the class I'm about to start a definition question. That's not what I don't tell the class that, but that's what I'm using. So the words that I use for myself as I studied the lesson this week may be different from yours. That's fine. Go with yours, maybe use the same format. I found two words. One is evidence. Oh, I got a lot for evidence. One is evidence, okay? We're going to talk about Dorcas and the early church. And the second word that I could possibly use if I was teaching is the word community. I thought Christina had read my notes when she said commotion, but community, because I was thinking about this last night, and sadly, I had to admit that the experience of the early church in Acts chapter 2, 3, and 4, I can't say that I've really experienced a church community experience like that. That was a hard thing for me to admit. It might be just because of our Western society where, we're all going about our separate ways. And I know in other parts of the world, people are more communal and families, they'll all live together and people share eating out of the same pot or whatever. And maybe in our Western way of doing things, we're so segmented in our lives that our church participation is just church participation. I come to church, we have a good time, I greet you, find out how your week was, then I leave and go back to my life. But in the early church, it was like they were family, not just we all are members or baptized in the same church. They were so close, as we'll talk about a little bit about in the book of Acts, that because when people claimed the name of Christ, they were immediately ostracized by their Jewish families. A lot of them lost their place of living, their source of income, because they decided to be disciples of Christ. It was a serious thing to choose to be a disciple of Christ after his death in the early church. Well, in the book of Acts, it talks about how they were such a community that those that had stuff sold it so that no one had a need. I'm thinking to myself, man, have I really ever experienced that? Yes, I've given them people, and people when I've been down and out have helped me out. But this is a whole nother level. And I'm going to give you some secrets about what I discovered and asking myself the question, why don't we have that experience? Why is our church life so siloed from the rest of our lives? And I have some great information on that I'll share in just a minute. So the two things that I would one of those I would choose, and I would say, hey, class, listen, we got a great discussion today. The title is Ministry in the New Testament Church. We just read the memory text together. One of the things, class, we're going to be talking about today is evidence. When it all boils down, one of the things we're going to focus on is this concept of evidence. So before we get started here, I'm about to ask a question. This is what I'm doing. I'm setting the class up for I need hands in the air. Before we get started, class, I just like to make sure we're all on the same page. What does the word evidence mean to you? That includes the visitor. I didn't ask him anything about the Bible, anything about the week's lesson. I just want to know what this word means because I just want hands in the air. I researched it already. I went online, and if I was teaching, I already got the description. I have the definition. I know the answer, so I'm not going to say, class, we're going to spend time talking about evidence. And evidence is that which tends to prove or disprove something, a ground for belief. I won't say that because I'm robbing the class of a chance to go on this journey of a discovery. I'll ask them and they'll say, oh, evidence means that. And I'll say, well, Jamie, tell me, what do you mean when you say it means that? Okay, great. Anyone else? Oh, yes, Christina. Uh-huh. Oh, why do you say that, Christina? Oh, okay. Does anybody else want to share? Even though I get the perfect answer the first time, I need hands in the air. Y'all with me so far, okay? That's how I suggest starting my thing. I've noticed the church not understand what a disciple is. Yeah, that's true. I can't argue that. Sabbath school should be part of the discipleship process. So I always look at Sabbath school as our opportunity to help make some things plain that we might miss just by listening to sermons. But because in our Sabbath school, we take the time to open our Bibles, we help each other and ourselves to grow, okay? So I got people's hands in the air, and now we're going to do the formula called Three-step. I hope that's not backwards for you guys. I don't know. I hope it's not backwards. Is my writing backwards? I hope it isn't. I don't know how these things does, if it flips it or not. But we want to do the three-step. And can anyone tell me when I say the three-step, what I am referring to? Like, this is the process. The three-step is a process so you can teach with your Bible only. Okay? I didn't say go in blind, because those are my notes. What I took into the last class. Those are my notes. I don't know if it's straight backwards or not, but those are my notes. It's my memory text. This is the words I want to use to start, to get the hands up in the air, so on, so on, so on. Maybe I'll show that back to you in just a second. But let's see here. Oh, it looks fine. Great, great, great. Thanks, Ricky. Okay, so the process of teaching the lesson with your Bible is a very simple one. Here's what I suggest, and Christina mentioned that earlier on. So we're reading the lesson, and I would probably say, can I get a volunteer to, let me see which one I want to start with. Man, there's so much in this lesson. Let's say, well, I want to start with James chapter 1, because I talked about evidence. Here's what I'll say. Can I get a volunteer to read a verse in the book of James for me? I can read it myself. I can say, class, let's turn to the book of James, and now I'm going to get a volunteer. Going to get a volunteer to read. And when they read James 1:27, which says, and this text is found in the lesson, it says, pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this. That's the key word I would probably concentrate on. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this. This is the evidence. That's why we'll probably be trying to take people. I wouldn't tell them that right now. Pure and undefiled, they're reading it. To visit the orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. After that text is read, I never, ever, ever, ever start talking about something else. That text becomes the foundation of my next series of questions, because I want them in their Bibles, and we're going to do it. Okay, so here's where they read the text, and I'll say, oh, thank you, Ricky, for reading that. Class, what are these verses telling us about true religion? That's my question. Okay, so the formula is write this out for you. Three-step. 1, ask question. Very simple, all right? That's the number 1 step, okay? Number 1, ask the question. Number 2, get answers. And I want to emphasize answers, plural. Even if you get the right answer the first time out the chute. Does anybody else want to share? I need participation. I want everybody to feel like not just the deepest person, the smartest person, the most educated person, the loudest person. Even if all those entities give me a perfect answer, I'm still going to ask, does anybody else want to share? Because I'm letting you know. And even to that shy person who never says anything, I'll glance at them every now and then, let you know I see you. You don't have to say anything. I don't feel bad if everyone doesn't participate. Some people, they don't want to talk. That's fine. And sometimes I go places I don't want to say anything. That doesn't mean I'm not enjoying myself. So I don't feel any pressure to make sure everyone participates. But I want to make sure I lead my class in a way that is open for participation. So I asked the question, class, what do you think those texts are telling us? And someone's going to say, I think it means this is what religion is. I think it means that. I'm getting answers. And after we exhaust that, I'll say, can I get another volunteer to read another Bible text or text? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have somebody else read a text. And let's say here, oh, there's so much good stuff. They'll say, because we were talking about evidence, or let's say we're talking about, well, the evidence is that of a true religion is that you are doing for the, the least fortunate, or those who really have, those who are destitute, those who have needs. That's what James is talking about, that there's evidence to being a part of true religion. It's not just noise. It's not just music. It's not just sermons. It's not just classes. It's doing for others. That's what true religion is. Jesus came into this world acting out the principles of love. He sacrificed it all to help those of us who our entire world lost in sin, leaving us an example that we should do as he did. And that gets back to Acts chapter 2 in just a second. So, okay, so let's say I would talk about those verses because I use evidence as my theme. I would say, well, class, what does this tell us about evidence? Then I'll say, can I get another volunteer to read? And someone's going to read the story of in Acts. Can I get a volunteer to read Acts chapter 9, verse 36? That's the story of Dorcas. Okay, that's where I'm going now. And when they read the story of Acts chapter 9, verse 36, I'll read that for you tonight because I'm just pretending someone else is reading it. It says, at Joppa there was a certain disciple named Tabitha, which is translated Dorcas. This woman was full of good works and charitable deeds which she did. And we probably read some more verses about, her death and so on. So, but I asked someone to read. My very next question is, what kind of evidence did Dorcas, how does she lead her life to show evidence of her religion? Well, it's right there on the surface. But when we say, well, it says that she was full of good works, I would probably say, well, Jamie, what do you mean good? What do you think they meant by good works? And you'll say, well, I think it meant so and so and so and so. And then Ricky I say, well, anybody else want to tell me what the evidence is? Ricky, you might say, well, she was doing a lot of charitable work. I say, well, what does that mean, Ricky, when it says charitable work? We're going on a journey of discovery. I'm not giving the answers, okay? We're going to do this together, okay? So all I did was, I had someone read the Bible text. I asked the question about the Bible text. Now you could throw in another story here and there. Don't box yourself in. I got answers, multiple answers. And after we exhausted that, I asked for another volunteer to read. I'm telling you, if you do that 4 times, you run out of time. They'll be ringing the bell. And y'all will be having a good time. If you just stood back and looked at your class, you will see the people in your class with their Bibles open. If you have a visitor, you will see that visitor sharing along in that process. Now, listen, there's nothing more rewarding as a Sabbath school teacher. Okay? So that's some things. So, and then I do this a few times. I always, my personal way of teaching is to find a story that sort of ties it all together. And then I want to share a quotation just to give you some background that might help you. I always try to find a story, and I was thinking when I was preparing for this evening, what story could I tell to talk about evidence of, basically evidence of conversion? And I was thinking there's so many different stories I was thinking about. You might, have some stories in mind. But the story I thought about was one of my favorites. And I'm pretty sure it's from Luke chapter 19. And it is the story that we all learned in Cradle Roll of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a wee little man. You remember that story? The wee little man was he. That story, though very simplistic in our mind, is a very profound story, because here was a man whose life had been changed. If you read this background in Desire of Ages, his life had been changed, and he had already gone about the process of making restitution. That should be our experience. Not necessarily Zacchaeus, because we haven't necessarily robbed people, but our religion should compel us to live differently and have different priorities. Now, we all have to pray God's forgiveness constantly, because we all fall short. These lessons are just like they cut two ways. As I'm preparing, I'm thinking, Lord, have mercy on me. Help me to reach your desired ideal for my life. So this might help you a little bit. And if you have any questions, feel free to type them in as we begin to wrap up this evening. I just want to read something that I found, because I asked myself the question that I probably would ask the class. And it's a question that I find myself asking at different times that's quite similar. How did the early church become such a community like that? I mean, what was it about the early? Were they better people? What was it that caused them to live in such a way that their first thought was anything we can do to help move the gospel along, any sacrifice we have to make, we're willing to do it? That's deep. So I found this I'm pretty sure this is in Acts of the Apostles. I'm positive it's in Acts of the Apostles, okay? I'm just going to read just a little bit. This is just for our own edification. I would never suggest reading this much material in class. I'll on occasion read a paragraph, and because I have visitors, I always say my favorite author. That's how I introduce Ellen White into my classes. I don't ever want my classes to appear that the foundation of my class is on anything other than the Word of God. But Ellen White, I will never, ever teach a lesson without saying what Ellen White wrote about it. That's just who I am, and it served me well. It gives me some clarity, and I have never regretted taking the time to see what the Spirit of prophecy has to say about a subject. So let me just read this to you before we get out of here. And this is, she's commenting on Acts chapter 2, the early church, the people of being of one heart and one soul. And it reads this way. It says, as the disciples proclaimed the truths of the gospel in Jerusalem, God bore witness to their word, and a multitude believed. Many of these early believers were immediately cut off from family and friends by the zealous bigotry of the Jews, and it was necessary to provide them with food and shelter. And then she quotes, and the record declares, neither was there any among them that lacked. And it tells how the need was filled. Those among the believers who had money and possessions cheerfully, not reluctantly, cheerfully sacrificed them to meet the emergency, selling their houses, Lord help me, or their lands. They brought the money and laid it at the apostles' feet, and distribution was made unto every man according as he had need. Now, here's the part that I really want to emphasize for us tonight, and I want you to think about this as you prepare to teach this lesson. The liberality on the part of the believers was the result of the outpouring of the Spirit. Can't let that just pass over our heads. The converts to the gospel were of one heart and one soul. One common interest controlled them, the success of the mission entrusted to them. And covetousness had no place in their lives. Their love for their brethren and the cause they had espoused was greater than their love of money and possessions. Their works testify, there's that evidence, that they accounted the souls of men of higher value than earthly goods. And here's the kicker. Thus it will ever be when the Spirit of God takes possession of the life. Those whose hearts are filled with the love of Christ will follow the example of him who for our sake became poor, that through his poverty we might be made rich. I'll stop reading there, but when it said, thus it will ever be when the Spirit of God takes possession of the life, I just had to confess, Lord, I fall so short. Just work a change in my life. Help me to mirror these holy men and women of God and Jesus, most importantly. That should be all of our prayer as we're teaching this lesson that is speaking to all of us. So remember, let's just wrap up now. And if you don't have any questions, we'll be done. I'll give you back your evening. Not just information, not just a history teacher. Your prayer is to be inspiring and encouraging. Claim the promise in the book of James. If any man lacks wisdom, ask of God. Ask me. Just ask me. Don't just stress out and just, I can't do it. I can't. Ask for wisdom. As a Sabbath school teacher, that's my number one promise I claim. I've never taught a class. There I go saying things so definitively. I cannot remember the last time I taught a class without claiming that promise. Claim that promise as well. Listen, thank you all for joining tonight. I'm praying that it helps you to have a good class. Share the video. I'll load it on my YouTube page. If you go to sabbathschoolcoaching.com, you'll find the link to my YouTube page for those that are not on Facebook. But share it with someone that it might help because we're all in this thing together, okay? God bless you all. Thank you all for being so faithful to attend. Tell somebody for next week. I'd love to see some new people also join us, even though I know a lot of people watch this later on. And some people watch it while it's live, but they're like me. They won't click on it. They can hear it. But if they click on it, their name will show up and then they can't get off. I understand that because I do that a lot myself. But God bless you all. Remember, always aim high. Don't aim low. Always aim high. Y'all all have a good evening.